the Sabbath day to set it apart, as Yahuwah your power has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your power. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor your foreigner that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuwah your power brought you out of there through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahuwah your power commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Hey, esteem your Amma and your Ema as Yahuwah your power has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well with you in the land which Yahuwah your power is about to give you. Ba, you shall not murder. Zain, neither shall you commit adultery. Ket, neither shall you steal. Tet, neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. Yud, neither shall you desire your neighbor's Isha, neither shall you cover your neighbor's bed, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words Yahuwah spoke unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more, and he wrote them in 2 tables of stone, and delivered them unto me. And it is so.
And it is so. Devarim chapter 6, verses 1 through 18. These are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahuwah your power commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going to enter and possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah power of your Abbas has promised you in the land that flows with milk and honey. Verse 3 is very important unto us. He said, observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah power of your Abbas has promised you in the land that flows with milk and honey. Very important that we observe to do everything that he has commissioned and commanded us through his instructions. Shema Yisrael, or Yasharal, Yahuwah our power, Yahuwah is Akkad. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one, Yahuwah is Akkad. And you shall ahab Yahuwah your supreme one with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your bed and on your gates. And it shall be when Yahuwah your power shall have brought you into the land which he swore to your Abbas, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Yaakov, to give you great cities which you did not build, houses full of all great things which you filled not, and wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, somebody say, be full.
Be full.
Then beware lest you forget Yahuwah, which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the bed of slavery. You shall fear Yahuwah your power, and serve him, and shall swear by his name. You shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. For Yahuwah your power is a jealous power among you, lest the anger of Yahuwah your power be kindled against you, and destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahuwah your power as you tempted him in Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power, and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And you shall do that which is right in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the great land, which Yahuwah swore unto your Abbas. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. Let's sing another song, please.
Mighty are the works of your hands.
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 Mighty are the works of your hands. mighty, strong and mighty,
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
powerful are the works of your hands,
Powerful are the works of your hands.
powerful are the works of your hands,
Powerful are the works of your hands.
powerful are the works of your hands,
Powerful are the works of your hands.
powerful are the works of your hands,
Powerful are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
merciful are the works of your hands,
Merciful are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
beautiful are the works of your hands,
Beautiful are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
great are the works of your hands,
Great are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
strong and mighty, strong and mighty,
Strong and mighty, strong and mighty.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
mighty are the works of your hands,
Mighty are the works of your hands.
waters turn into wine.
Open the eyes of the blind. No one like
Come on, sing.
none like you. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. No one like water you turn into wine. Open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you. None like you. Into the darkness you shine. Out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you. None like you. Yahuwah is greater. Yahuwah is stronger. Yahuwah is higher than any other. Yahuwah is healer. Awesome and power. Yahuwah. Yahuwah. Yahuwah is greater. Yahuwah is stronger. Yahuwah is higher than any other. Yahuwah is healer. Awesome and power. Yahuwah. Yahuwah. Yahuwah is greater. Yahuwah is stronger. Yahuwah is higher than any other. Yahuwah is healer. Awesome and power. Yahuwah. Yahuwah. And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? Stand against. Stand against. And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? And if Yahuwah is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if Yahuwah is with us, then what can stand against? Stand against. Stand against. Stand against. Come on, praise him. Come on, praise him, praise him, praise him. Don't praise him, lift your voice and praise him. He's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy. Come on, praise him, he's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy. He's worthy, he's worthy, he's worthy. And again, we do appreciate Abba Yahuwah for yet another day, another yom that we are able to come in and celebrate, commemorate a time of Sabbath rest, a time that we focus on resting. Yes. And also in our time of resting, we learn in our time of resting. And so I appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do for us that have a desire and have a hunger and thirst for his uprightness. As we continue to have that hunger, he will continue to feed us. As we continue to have that thirst, he will continue to satisfy our thirst with his instructions for our lives. We're going to turn our attention to Yahush, the son of Nun, chapter 1, verse 7 and 8. We're going to read verse 7, and then we're going to confess verse 8 as I have tailored it to fit our time of confession. Verse 7 says, "Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the Torah which Moshe, my servant, commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go." Now, I want to say this real quick once again, because I've had questions. People have asked me, are we
do we just believe in the first covenant? We believe in both covenants, first and renewed covenant. You cannot have the renewed covenant without the Torah because it is based upon Torah principles. Yes. And so when we say the Torah, understand we are talking about the Torah, the Haftorah, and the Brit Hadashah. We are talking about the full package deal. No more than you could take, if a mother is pregnant, take the baby away from the mother and that baby be separated. No, as long as that baby is inside the womb, that baby is connected. And even when that baby is outside the womb, there is still a connection. Yeah. So you can't separate it, and we will never separate it. Once again, we believe in the full package of what he's given unto us. So when you hear us say the Torah, and when we make reference to the writings, it is not because we are that we're not followers of Yahush and the renewed covenant. It is that we maintain the structure and the foundation for the renewed covenant. Yeah. Because once again, without the foundation, you cannot have a renewed covenant. Right. And so we understand Yahush is the foundation. And so when we speak of Moshe and we read the writings, you have to understand Moshe spoke of Yahush as well. So it's important that we understand the connection and never allow that connection to ever be broken. All right. Now we're going to go to, as it is broken up into verses, verse 8, and we are going to confess that as I have tailored it to fit a time of our confession. Repeat with me. I will not let this scroll of the Torah.
I will not let this scroll of the Torah
depart out of my mouth.
Depart out of my mouth.
But I shall meditate in it.
But I shall meditate in it.
Day and night.
Day and night.
That I may observe to do.
That I may observe to do.
According to all that is written in it.
According to all that is written in it.
For then I shall make my way prosperous.
For then I shall make my way prosperous.
And act wisely.
And act wisely.
And act wisely.
And act wisely.
Now look at your neighbor, tell your neighbor, and you shall act wisely. And you shall act wisely. Look at your other neighbor, tell your other neighbor, and you shall act wisely. And you shall act wisely. Now take your hand and place it over your heart and say, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I shall act wisely.
Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I shall act wisely.
I
endeavor
to act wisely.
To act wisely.
Come on, I
endeavor
to act wisely.
To act wisely.
I endeavor
to
to act wisely.
act wisely.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. It is very important, as you've heard me say it many times over and over again, it is important that we act wisely, because whatever we do, people are going to look at us and they are going to determine our actions, or they're going to basically judge us by our actions to determine whether or not we are truly the people of Yasharal, or if we are the set apart people. And if our actions are contrary to what we say, then how can they truly follow our lives and truly see that we are the people of Yahuwah? Can't be done, can it? Because if you see somebody acting up and acting a fool, you be like, no, they can't be a part of this. They can't be a part of that person, especially if it's a family, you know, and that family is really takes pride and really is a stickler for obedience and for child discipline, or even discipline of a person's life at all, that's a part of the family, then you must understand, if you see them acting contrary to that, then you question, are they really a part of that mishpachot? There's no way possible. Why would you say that? Because they are acting out of what? Character. So when we act out of character, it is because we have forgotten to keep the scroll of the Torah from departing out of our mouths. If it departs out of your mouth, it will soon not be seen in your life. If you dismiss it from your mouth and you allow it to stop coming forth out of your mouth, then eventually it will not be projected from your life. And this is one of the things that's important for us as a people, because you can talk a good talk all day, but you have to put up or shut up. You know, when we were out there and we play, even now when we play games or do whatever, you know, we have those that talk a lot of junk. You know, well, I'll do this and I'll do that. Talk is cheap until you're able to put some action to your words. So it's important that we maintain a lifestyle that says we are the set apart people of Yasharal. We are the set apart people of Yahuwah. And we are known by our character. We are known by how we portray and how we govern our lives. Contrary to popular belief, we are known by how we govern ourselves. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. All right, Mishlei 15:8, the sacrifices of the wicked is an abomination, hateful and exceeding offensive unto you, Abba Yahuwah, but the prayer of the upright, it is his delight. I want my prayer to be his delight.
Yes.
I don't want him to give deaf ear to my words. Tehillim 1:1, Baruch is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the instructions of Abba Yahuwah, and he doth meditate upon it, and it is so. Abram 11:6, but without belief it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to Yahuwah must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Somebody say, I'm a diligent seeker.
I'm a diligent seeker.
And it is so, I am a diligent seeker. Tehillim 34:15, the eyes of Yahuwah are upon the upright, and his ears are open unto our cry. Verse 17, the upright cry, and Yahuwah heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. Masa, Acts 1:8, but ye shall receive power after that, the Ruach Kodesh is come upon you, and you shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and all Judea and in Samaria, and unto the uttermost part of the earth. It is important that we understand that we are witnesses of his greatness, and we are witnesses of his power. So if we're going to be a witness, there has to be a life-changing experience. And with that life-changing experience, there must be some actions that follow it. Our lifestyle has to change. Our desire has to change. Your motives have to change. If there is no change from the inside out, then the question is, did you really encounter him? Did you really meet him? Did you really come into the truth of knowing about him? Because it's important that we understand these things, and it's important that we learn these things so that we can observe to do everything that he's called us and commissioned us to do. I know at the time that we're in, especially in the time, we're not in the last days or the last hours, we're in the last seconds. And so it is important that we govern our lives accordingly, and that we do all that he has commanded us to do, so that we can find ourselves living a prosperous life before the nations. And let me tell you something, prospering does not always mean financially. Because if we're not prospering in the knowledge of who he is and coming into a greater understanding of who he is and truly understanding the sacrifice of Yahushua HaMashiach, then are we really prospering? Are we really prospering? If we have the mindset, and I'm not I'm straying from what we're doing, but as a Ruach Kodesh leads, I have to say, are we really desiring to walk in the fulfillment of that what he has given unto us? Are we truly desiring to walk and fulfill the mandate and the instructions that he's placed over our lives? A lot of time when I look on social media and I see a lot of things going on, and I see people pulling off to themselves and they start doing things, I began to sense in my ruach that the reason people do that is because they feel like they can't depend and rely upon anybody. Now you have to understand where I'm going with this. A lot of time we feel like it's best that I pull away and do on my own because at least I can depend upon myself. Well, that's the wrong mentality. Because no matter what, if you fall down, you can't get yourself up. Because if you could get yourself up, you wouldn't have never fallen. Are you following me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. And I'm saying this because unity is very important for us as a people. No, you may not see us all the time, and you may not see other people all the time. But you must understand, regardless if you see us every day or every waking moment, we are still here. We have not abandoned the work. We have not abandoned what he's given us to do. We have other assignments that we have to put our hands to. But I'm saying this to encourage somebody today. Don't make yourself an island. Don't make yourself a target for the enemy to destroy you. Because many a times, that's exactly what we do. We pull away because we feel like nobody is dependable. Well, number one, we only to depend upon one another to a certain degree and to a certain level.
Right.
It is important that we understand we can depend on one another, and we are supposed to depend upon one another. But never let it get to the point that if you cannot and that person is not there, even if we're not there, that we're not dependable. You must understand, never ever separate yourself from being connected Because when you do that, once again, you make yourself a target for the enemy to come in and ravish you and destroy you. None of us are islands, and none of us should ever feel that we have to stand alone.
That's
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand, because many times we feel like, well, I have to, because I can depend on nobody. Nobody's there. When I need people, they're not there. Are y'all following me? It's
Yes.
very important for us to understand. Remember, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's a nation of us. We may not all see eye to eye, but we are still a nation, growing in the truth of Yahuwah, growing in his strength, growing in the knowledge of who we are, and especially of who he is and who his son is. It's important that we understand that. Mystery 3 and 4. So shall you find great understanding and high esteem in the sight or judgment of Yahuwah and man. Ayah 33 and 4. The Ruach Kodesh of Yahuwah hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. Somebody say he's a life giver.
He's a life giver.
Say it again. He's a life giver.
He's a life giver.
Micah 3 and 8. But truly I am full of power by the Ruach Kodesh of Yahuwah, and of judgment and of might, to declare unto Yaakov his transgression, and to Yasharal his sin. Very important that we understand these scriptures that we give out and that we have come to build our life upon. Very important that we understand this. And it is so.
And it is so.
Yehukin and Aleph 5, 4, and 5. But whatsoever is born of Yahuwah overcometh the world. And this is the victory that overcometh the world. Even our belief. Who is he that overcometh the world? But he that believeth that Yahushua is the son of Yahuwah. Very important question. Once again, it is very important that we understand that question posed to us as believers. We must believe in the son of Yahuwah. We must believe in him. Yehukin and Aleph 2, 5, and 6. But whoever keeps his word or his Torah, truly the Ahab of Yahuwah is perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. How do we know? Because of the Ahab. He who says he abides in him ought himself also to walk just as he walked. As who walked? Yahush walked. And until we understand really how he walked, that we may truly walk in his footsteps, then we will really never know how to Ahab, number one, ourselves, and then understanding how to Ahab each other. And even in that, the first and foremost is understanding how to Ahab him and his son. Because without that, we cannot truly be a strong nation or a strong people. And it is so.
And it is so.
Verse 17, and the world passes away and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of Yahuwah abideth forever. Somebody say abideth forever.
Abideth forever.
Say it again, abideth forever.
Abideth forever.
And it is so.
It is so.
Let's have another song.
Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy, and all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy.
You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment. Hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Lift up your voice and praise him. Come on, if he's the center of your joy, come on, if he's all that's great and perfect, do you really know it comes from him? So, praise him, praise him, praise him. He's worthy. He's worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy, you're worthy. You're worthy. Allah Yahuwah. He's worthy. He's worthy. He's worthy. He's worthy. He's worthy. He's worthy. And we appreciate him. Do you appreciate him today?
Yes.
I appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's is our King. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. Great is our King. Great, great, great is our King. Great is our King. I'm just reading it off. Great is our King. At this time, we're going to do our declaration. Then we're going to do our affirmation, then our declaration, and then we're going to seal our time of praise, worship, and prayer. Something that Yahuwah gave to me for us as a standing people, because we are a standing people, not a falling and failing people, and that is to have an affirmation or affirmations that we speak over our lives. We recite or we confess Yahushua the son of Nun, chapter 1, verses 7 and 8, but also to have a goal and to maintain and stick with that goal and follow through with it, so that we find ourselves developing and growing. I don't know about you, but every time we celebrate the feast and we celebrate the Shabbat feast, you have to understand this is a feast. It is not just a time that we just lay dormant. We don't do any work, no servile work, but we still give him praise. We still give him what is due him. And in this time, it's important that we understand that we keep our hearts and our minds fresh, and that we keep ourselves open to hear what he would say unto us through the Ruach HaKodesh. During the feast, one of my prayers was, and it is always during the Shabbat and during our annual feast, and that is to be different when I come out. As I go in one way, but as I come out a whole different person. I come out with a renewed mindset, with a renewed fervency, with a renewed motive, with a renewed momentum. So that as I come out seeing things differently. I come out experiencing the things of Abba Yahuwah differently. And I don't come out with the same mindset and the same motive as I went in with. Not saying that my motive and my desire was wrong, but when we encounter Yahuwah and when we meet with him on the during the Moed, during the feast, the appointed times, it is important that we understand that is an appointment. Just like when you go to the doctor, you don't just, if you have an appointment, you go specifically to see the doctor you set the appointment up with. And so when you go and you go to that appointment, this is the time where you're intimate with that doctor. And what I mean by intimate, I'm talking about, you talk about things that are important. You talk about the personal things that's going on with your body and so forth. And so it is at this time that we go before Yahuwah during these appointed times that we are examined. It is a time that we do, we have an examine. He examinates us. It is during a time where we truly get a chance to examine our lives, do a reality check over our lives. And so it is important in that time that we do so. And I found that one of the things that helped me and to help us as a body is to have affirmations. That what we speak over our lives, that what we speak into the atmosphere, to make the atmosphere conducive of our praise, our prayer, and our requests and supplications unto Abba Yahuwah. Well, someone would say, well, obedience does that. Absolutely. I am in full agreement with obedience. And with our obedience, we want to make sure that our mouths are also lining up. We don't want to be speaking contrary to our actions. Neither do we want to have our actions speaking or being contrary to our speech. So we want to line it up. And then there are times that you get to a point in your life, and I know I have, where you don't want to start feeling down and out, and you don't want to start feeling depressed, and you don't want to start feeling isolated and alone. So you have to remember what you've been called to do. Why did he bring us out of darkness? So that we could experience his marvelous light, the Torah. Why did he wake us up? He woke us up for a reason. And so in that, excuse me, it's important that we maintain that train of thought. And in maintaining that train of thought, the enemy would have a whole lot, he would have some hell to go through to try to defeat us, to try to make us stumble, to try to make us fumble, to try to make us abandon and abort the mission that he's given unto us. So it's important that we understand throughout our daily routine and even during these times, we ought to have a goal. We ought to have a purpose. Why we do what we do. Why do we study? Why do we sit in class? Why do we sit in anybody's class? And that is to develop, to be nurtured, to develop, and so that we are able to mature. Because see, you don't want to just be growing without development. Because if you know anybody that has Down syndrome or anybody that has a physical handicap in that respect, they can grow, but they can't develop. People with Down syndrome can grow, but they're not developing. And this is why you can see on their face and their learning ability is limited, because they're able to grow but not develop. It's two different things. And so it's like a plant can grow but not produce because it's stunted. And we don't want to be that. We want to be able to grow and to develop and to mature and to do what? Produce the fruit that we're supposed to produce.
Right.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And so he gave me this for us as a people. And I like to share it during our Shabbats so that we are able to understand where we're going, and so people can understand where we're going. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, repeat with me. I purpose to develop my ruach.
I purpose to develop my ruach.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I am Ibram.
I am Abram.
I am born again.
I am born again.
I am Ibram.
I am Abram.
I have the life and nature of Yahuwah
I have the life and nature of Yahuwah
in my ruach.
in my ruach.
That life is the Torah of Yasharal.
That life is the Torah of Yasharal.
I purpose to walk in the Torah of life.
I purpose to walk in the Torah of life.
Yahuwah's Torah,
Yahuwah's Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's knowledge,
Yahuwah's knowledge
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's ahab,
Yahuwah's ahab
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's power,
Yahuwah's power
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's wisdom,
Yahuwah's wisdom
is in me.
is in me.
He is teaching me.
He is teaching me.
He is leading me.
He is leading me.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
The Ruach Kodesh
The Ruach Kodesh
of Yahuwah in me
of Yahuwah in me
is leading me.
is leading me.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll walk in the Torah.
I'll walk in the Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush.
our Mashiach.
Our Mashiach.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now, as we go forward during our time of declaration, let us say this together. Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
in the name of Yahush,
in the name of Yahush,
our Mashiach,
our Mashiach,
we subdue ignorance
we subdue ignorance
with Torah knowledge.
with Torah knowledge.
And through this knowledge
And through this knowledge
of Torah truth,
of Torah truth,
we claim healing,
we claim healing,
shalom,
shalom,
deliverance,
deliverance,
and salvation.
and salvation.
We decree
We decree
Torah truth
Torah truth
in the lives
in the lives
of your people,
of your people,
our people, Yasharal.
Yasharal.
We unite
We unite
not to fight,
not to fight,
not to fight
not to fight
each other,
each other,
each other,
each other,
but the enemy
but the enemy
of our belief.
of our belief.
And it is so.
And it is so.
I decree a time of shalom, rest, and truth in Yahuwah through Yahush HaMashiach. And it is so.
And it is so.
Let us bow now before our King as we come to this portion of our class to seal our praise, our prayers, our requests, and our confession. Let us bow before our King and let us recite this together. May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you,
be desirable before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you,
be desirable before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. We have just recited Tehillim 19 and 15, and it is so.
And it is so.
You may take your seat in His presence as we turn our attention back to the scroll of Devarim, chapter 4, and we're going to begin at verse 19. We stopped off there last night just to give you a little nugget bites. We want to take up from there. While you're turning there, I like to do as I do during our class, for those that may be with us on this young, that were not with us on layout, which is last night, to bring you up to date of what we're doing and what this theme is. Wait, Canaan, and I pleaded. This is our theme, and I pleaded. I want to read a synopsis about the final book of the Torah, or the final scroll of the Torah, Sefer HaDevarim, or Devarim. Moshe reviews the history and the laws given to the Ibram people. The Greek name Deuteronomy comes from the phrase Mishnah HaTorah, Devarim 17 and 18, which means the second telling of the law. Obeying Yahuwah's laws will bring baruching, while spurning them will bring disaster. Idolatry is repeatedly denounced. And we know why that was constantly denounced, because that's what our people kept finding themselves falling into. Idolatry, idolatrous ways. And so at where we are on tonight, on to y'all, we are following the discourse of Moshe and his last appeal and his last words to Yasharal as they prepare to go into the land that was promised, the promised land. All right, now let's take up at verse 19. As you're turning there once again, I'm going to read 19, and then I'm going to let our readers read, because that's something that I believe is important that we all participate in reading. It's very fulfilling and thought-provoking when we read. And also it helps to stimulate your belief. All right, verse 19 says, unless you lift up your eyes unto Shemayim, and when you see the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of Shemayim, should be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahuwah your power has divided unto all nations under the whole Shemayim. Now, once again, it's important that we understand what's being said here, because we see this even today. We have, I've come to understand, I'm reading a book called the Masoret. And in the Masoret, you have the Masoret, which is the original understanding of everything that was in Shemayim, the stars and all that great stuff. And then you have the zodiac, which is the abnormal use, and which is the false use of that what Yahuwah created. And our people, along with those that they basically had come in contact with, were already doing this. And this is why Yahuwah said, don't you fall into it, and don't you lift your eyes unto it. Some nations worship the moon and the stars. Even today, worship of the sun and worshiping of fire prominent, especially in the, I don't like using the Middle East, but in India and other countries where they do these things. And we know even in Mitzrayim, they worship the sun. And so they worship different things, and they made these idols. And so they're being warned, don't follow into that same trap. Don't you do what they were doing, and don't you look up and begin to desire to worship these things. So it's important that we understand the warning that was coming. And even in the time we're living in, you can feel and sense that Yahuwah is warning his people. He's preparing us. But if we're not listening, we won't hear it. And if we're not watching, we won't see it. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand these things. All right, let us read. We're going to read, let's read 9 verses 20 to 29. And it is so. I'll read it. Devarim chapter 20. You have it? No, chapter 4. You have it? Okay, come on. You have it, son of a read. Mm-hmm.
But you would have taken me and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Mizraim, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, Yahuwah was angry with me for your sakes, and swear that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go into that great land, which Yahuwah thy Savior giveth to me for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan. But you shall go over and possess that great land. Take heed unto you yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahuwah your God, which he made with you, and made you a graven image, or the likeness of anything, which Yahuwah thy Savior hath forbidden. For Yahuwah thy Savior is a consuming fire, even a jealous power. And you shall beget children and children's children, and you shall have remained involved in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image, or the likeness of anything, shall be evil in the sight of Yahuwah thy power, to provoke him to anger. I caused your man and earth to witness against you this day, but you shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto you go over your possession. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And Yahuwah shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yahuwah shall lead you. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hand, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear, nor eat nor smell. But if from this you shall seek Yahuwah thy Savior, you shall find him, if you seek with all your heart and with all your soul.
And it is so. Wow. Isn't that something? Right in the midst of being assured of going into the land, there is a prophecy that is dropped upon them that is telling them, even before they get into the land, you're going to mess up and you're going to be scattered. You're going to play the dummy. I'm sorry. You're just going to play the fool in this. And you're going to lose out. Now, you have to look at from where Moshe is, excuse me, from where he is standing. He is not prophesying out of his heart. He is not prophesying out of anger. He is seeing what is going to be the result of their disobedience. You can also see that same prophecy, I believe it's in Jeremiah chapter 29, where Jeremiah speaks to the children of Yasharal, and he tells them after they're in the Babylonian captivity, when they seek Yahuwah with their whole heart, then they will find him. Let me look that up real quick. Let's go, let me see. I think it's in Jeremiah chapter 29. Let me check. 29. Let us check. 29 and 11, I believe it is. All right. Not 11, but it's in that same verse 13. Jeremiah 29 and 13. Let's look at that, please. Yeah, let's start at 11 and let's read 11, 12, and 13. Jeremiah 29. And this is the same prophecy that the prophetic word that Jeremiah spoke years after to the children of Yasharal. You have it? Come on.
11 to 13.
Yes.
For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith Yahuwah, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then you shall call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me. And I will seek, and you shall seek me, and find me when you shall search for me with all your heart. And find me when you shall search for me with all your heart.
And it is so. Now, when we go back to we see, I mean, we're speaking to them, and he's saying to them, um, but from thence you will seek Yahuwah, and thou shalt find him, if thou search after him with all thine heart and with all thy soul. That's the only way we're going to find him, is that we must seek him with all of our hearts. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
We have to first search after him. And then, as we search for him, we have to search for him with our heart and with our soul. In other words, with all of our strength and with everything that is in us. You know how when you're looking for something, when you tell somebody, look for something, you say, go in there, and I didn't find it. And you say, but did you look hard enough? I didn't see it. Go back and look again. And then when they go and really search and look, they find it because they take that initial efforts to go obstacles out of their way so that they're able to find that find. That's the same way we have to be. We've got to move the life's obstacles out of our way so that we are able to seek him with our whole heart and with all of our strength. It is important that we do these things. Why? Because that's the only way we're going to be able to find him.
That's right.
When we seek him with our whole heart and with everything that's in us, with all the strength and energy that we have, early mornings, late nights, throughout the Torah,
Right.
the Haftorah, the prophets, the Brit Hadashah, seeking him that we may truly find him. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. And it is so. All right. Now, once again, making reference to that and to where we are. Help us, Abba Yahuwah, to maintain our consistency in you. Now, listen what he says. Yahuwah was angered with me because my action endangered Yahuwah's covenant with you. Now, you see that? Yahuwah, it was angry with me because my action endangered Yahuwah's covenant with you. Do you not know that our actions can endanger the covenant of Yahuwah in our families' lives?
Yes.
How could that be? Because if we're acting contrary to what he has given us, we can put other people in danger of falling out the race, of not wanting to be a part, of saying, you know what, I prefer to go back in Christianity because this right here is stupid and ridiculous. It doesn't make sense for people that say they are awakened to act like they act. They act like a bunch of crazy, wild people. They act like they have no kind of morals. They act like they have no kind of community, no kind of camaraderie. Why would I want to do this? At least, now listen to what I'm saying. I would not do this. But people would say, at least when I'm there, they may be faking, but at least getting fake ahab and a fake fellowship is better than none at all. Because of our actions. We don't want to endanger the covenant because of our actions. We don't want to do that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
He said, I have been debarred from entering the promised land. Therefore, take great heed lest you forget the covenant of the land, of Yahuwah, and become a prey to idolatry. Is that something? Once again, he constantly reiterates that because there is just a sensational appetite of our ancestors and forefathers to follow after idolatry, to follow after idolatrous ways, to always crave to do what they were commissioned and commanded not to do. You tell the baby, don't stick that fork into the socket. Don't stick it in there. There are major consequences. All babies did not die. Some of them got the shock of their lives, but then the other ones did. Now, once again, we don't want to be that hard-headed child that constantly, regardless of how many times we read it, regardless of how many times we see it, we still walk in disobedience. Because we have not learned from the death of our ancestors and forefathers. Are you following me?
Yes.
And it is so. When thou shalt beget children, a long period of prosperity and security in their own land might create among the people a tendency to apostasy. If this should happen, Moshe predicted as their punishment the loss of their land and their dispersion among the nations. The text opens up with the word kai, when, which means when, and not im, if. This led the rabbis, listen, to assert that in addition to a warning, this verse also contains a prediction that after 852 years, they would be exiled. Actually, the destruction of the temple and the subsequent exile took place after 850 years. But Yahuwah in his mercy brought upon them the predicted retribution 2 years earlier. To prevent the complete fulfillment of the prophecy that he shall soon utterly perish, or that ye shall soon utterly perish. Once again, he told them, he warned them through prophecy. If you don't stop doing what you're doing, you're going to die. Now you have to understand, just because they were standing there and it looked like, oh man, they were ready and they were doing, does not mean that they were ready. You have to understand, Yahuwah looks at the heart of man, not the outside. And because something looks clean and looks great doesn't mean that it's necessarily clean and great. Because he began to call them on the carpet concerning their heart. Now let me show you something. Ibram 4:12 says, and I want to go to it because I want to make sure I quote this right, that the Torah is sharper than any two-edged sword. 4:12 says, for the Torah of Yahuwah is living and working and sharper than any two-edged sword, cutting through even to the dividing of being and ruah, and of joints and marrow, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. So you have to understand, right then and there, we see this verse in action because the Torah was judging their hearts because it knew the next step of their actions would be to walk in idolatry. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We don't want that to be us. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
This is why we must understand and take heed to the warnings of the Torah. Take heed to the warning that he constantly gives unto us as a people. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because even though at times we may think we all right and we got everything straight, we still need work. We still need work. Let me turn my light on. All right. Let us finish reading. I get excited when I dive into these things and really see what's going on. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Now listen what he says also, and then we're going to finish reading. I call Shemayim and Eret to witness. Moshe often called Shemayim and Eret to witness his words of admonishment because they are everlasting. Why could we say his words were everlasting? Because he was the mouthpiece of Yahuwah. He was the mouthpiece of Yahuwah. And in spite of him messing up, he understood, when to speak what Yahuwah gave unto him to speak. Few in number among the nations. As a punishment for their misdeeds, Yasharal will be dispersed among all the nations and will form a minority in their midst. Aggregate, their numbers will not be inconsiderable. In other words, they will still be a lump. First in place, then it'll be few. But when we come together, we will be a large number. There you shall serve, watch this, gods. Now understand, Yahuwah we do not call him God. He's above that. He is greater than that. And we should not go with gods and demigods. The Kadesh land occupies a special position in the relationship between Yahuwah and since this relationship cannot. Now listen, and I always bump when stuff comes about. Come across very similar readings, and because we take the information and some comes about. Listen, come across very similar readings, and because we take the information and sometimes some of us take everything at face value, we tend to rely on that and hold to that and say, okay, we tend to rely on that and hold to that and say, okay, this must be why we can't do what we do. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You have to learn to eat the fish and spit out the bones. You have to learn how to take what is necessary and that what is not and disregard it.
Right.
Now listen what is being said here. Since this relationship cannot exist anywhere else in the world, the mere presence of Yahshua in the diaspora is equally to serving strange gods. The rabbis declared, now listen who declared this. The rabbis declared whoever dwells outside the Kadesh land is regarded as if he worshiped idols. Nowhere is that scriptural. Nowhere is that Torah. Once again, rabbis. Are you following me?
Yes.
The rabbis put this in place. And I want to read something to you real quick. Hand me that. Because I want to show you that this stuff is documented and that this is what they were doing. And people, I don't want to use the term jacked up, but while a lot of our people are misled and follow in erroneous teachings because of that. Now let me show you where rabbis. All right, I want to read this. And this is talking about the major sin of the Pharisees. But it's going to still show us where they got their belief and where they got the way they do things from. Excuse me. The Pharisees of Yahushua's day misinterpreted many stringent regulations and rules that over time became a yoke of bondage and slavery to the people who followed them, talking about Sharon. Not only that, but they claim to be, listen at this, Yahuwah's one true authority or one true church or congregation, and claim absolute authority. To claim absolute authority means nobody else is capable of having any type of authority. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yes.
Very familiar. You have to understand, Yahuwah never gave anybody absolute authority except Yahush. He's the only one that had absolute authority. Now, listen what it says. Now, according to the rabbis, Debitum 30 and 12 says, the Torah is not in Shemayim. The verse actually says that the Torah is not far off. So there is no excuse not to obey it. No excuse to not to obey it. Are you following?
Yes.
Now, the reason why I'm going into this and making a reference to this is because even on last night, for those that were with us and those that may come and watch this teaching later, I made a reference as I was reading where it was stated that if we were not in the land, just like even in the passage I just read, or their interpretation of it, said that if we were not in the land, it is impossible for us to follow the instructions or the Torah of Yahuwah. And as I read today, that it's impossible for us to have a relationship, which is absolutely a lie and not true. It is not true whatsoever. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Now, once again, I'm going to show you where this type of information gets in, where this type of stuff comes in secretly, where this stuff is interjected or injected into our mainstream. So when people read it and they grab it, they believe that this is what I'm supposed to believe. This is how I'm supposed to believe it. Am I making sense today?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. Now listen what it says. Rabbis are different. They claim the Torah is literally no longer to be found in Shemayim. Therefore, Yahuwah has no say in interpreting it. Do you see the pride and the arrogance? You basically separate Yahuwah from his instructions. You can't. But this is the mentality that they had. Why? Because they were demonic. They were demonic. Now listen what he says. The rabbi's conclusion was that the interpretation of the rabbis even superseded a direct decree from Yahuwah himself. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And this is quoted from Gordon Nehemiah, or Nehemiah Gordon, in his book, The Ibram Yahush versus the Greek Jesus. Rabbinic and Pharisaic Judaism is the belief that the rabbis have absolute authority. Once again, this is a problem, and many people today believe that, and this is why you have so many uprisings, and you have so many of us bickering and fussing because of the side of information that we tend to take and hold in great regard instead of trying it and comparing it in the Torah. Now listen what he says. Another problem with the Pharisees and rabbis was their often irrational explanation of scripture. Shema 23:2. You shall not go after the majority to do evil, neither shall you testify in a matter of strife to incline after the majority to pervert justice. The verse seems clear. We should not testify or witness against a person just because everyone else does, or the majority of people condemn him. That's what it says. Now listen to how they twisted it and how they basically misconstrued it, and they deliberately did this. This is not something that they, this was an accident. I really misunderstood this. No, it's no secret that they did this deliberately. They did this on purpose. It was not something that they did because they didn't understand. They went in fully understanding why they were going to twist it because of their own twisted ways. The rabbis, however, in their interpretation, cross out every word of the verse except the words incline after the majority. In other words, they interpret the verse to say go after the majority. In other words, they interpret, once again, the verse to say go after the majority, just as they did Yahush. They went to get people to lie on him. The verse actually says to go after what is what? True. Seek the truth, but they reject that interpretation in the esteem of their own rabbinical majority, decision, and decrees. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Unless the majority of rabbis teach something, it is automatically rejected, whether it comes from a prophet or Shemaim or Yahuwah himself. Now you have to understand that's very bold. Very bold, to where you try to disconnect Yahuwah from his instruction. Sounds like Shaitan, doesn't it? Sounds just like him. That's how you know these are his children, his offspring. Now listen at this. The sages, Maimonides. Maimonides is a person who came up with laws and statutes. Now this is why you cannot follow the traditions of men. In the Middle Ages, he explains that if there is a debate on the interpretation of any law between 1,001 rabbis and 1,000 prophets, one is required to obey the teaching of the 1,001 rabbis. These are his words. If there are 1,000 prophets, all of them of the statute of Elijah and Elisha, giving a certain interpretation, incline authority. Once again, Shema 23:2 is 1,001 rabbis, not according to the 1,000 venerables. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, I'm putting out there for us to be able to substantiate and to stand right from wrong. Cut and dry. When you read things and you hear continually, that is not from Yahuwah. He didn't wake us up to displace us again. Because if that's the case, he would have left us place while we were asleep. And thus our said from the mouth of Yahush, the son of Nun, not obey him, nor would we listen to him. The sages said further, if Elijah comes and tells us The levirate obligation is canceled through a shoe, Debitum 25:9. We will listen to him because this is what the oral law teaches. But if he says it is canceled through a, we will not listen to the law of a certain command such, even that the reasoning of a certain sage is correct, the prophet must be executed. Must be executed. This is why Yahushua dealt with them about what? Killing the prophets. That's what they did. And they were ready to try to kill him as well. And you can read that in Yehukin in chapter 5. It is not in Shemai, Debitum 30:12. Thus Yahuwah did not permit us to learn from the prophets, only from the rabbis who are men of logic and reasoning. This is a quote from the Maimonides. Wonder why, once again, this stuff is put into the mainstream, accepting the words of the prophet. They would prefer to follow the sages. And this is why they follow that. Because in their mind, it is the only way to do it. Are y'all following?
Yes.
Maimonides even went further to declare that if a prophet thinks contrary to the oral law, even if scripture agrees with the prophet, that prophet must be executed. Thus, the Abrams superseded the written Torah in esteem of decisions and rules added by generations of rabbis, thus rejecting Yahuwah's written Torah, the foundation of life. And instead of being anchored to follow, excuse me, opinion of men and humans, and contrary interpretations of rabbis, mere men who taught it. And if you are following this type of teaching, and if you are following this type of instruction, you're out of order. Cut and dry. Now to the sage Maimonides, this is what he asserted. He who prophesies in the name is anything in the oral law, even if the plain scripture supports that what he says. For example, if he says that when the Torah says you shall pity Debitum 25:12, that it really means cutting off the hand and not a monetary fine, as we are taught by the oral law. And that prophet attributes his statement to prophesy, saying, the Kaddish one, Baruch Behi told me that the commandment that says you shall cut off her hand is to be understood at face value, that prophet shall be executed through strangulation. Memo pages 16 and 17. Are you hearing me? Opinion ranks as the surest form of blasphemy. How important is the Torah, the written instruction and teaching of Yahuwah? Are we here? Are we here and understanding?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. And the reason why I brought that forth is so that we can understand that you will find these things put into mainstream. It's put into our books that we educate ourselves with. It's put into literature that we use to study. And the thing of, you got to catch it. And when you catch it, then the thing of it is you realize, no, I can't, that's not right. You bring clarity and you bring truth to it and you correct it. But you don't let it go on. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It would mean that all of us that are here able to follow the instructions of, and as silly as it sounds, actually come to me and attack me on these same bases and say You can't keep the land that we are, because we are can't have a relationship with him. This is where they get that from. Traditions. Nowhere does Yahuwah tell us that we cannot have a relationship with him, or does he forbid us from keeping the feast. He tells us to keep them. It is to be rendered in our dwellings for every generation. Every next generation has to pick it up and keep it going. When you leave, the next generation has to keep it going. It never stops, no matter where we are. But once again, ill information continually broods between us as a people. Umar Johnson made it plain. All violence is miseducation. And the father of all, of all violence is castration, economical castration. You have to, when we continue to do this, that our ancestors and forefathers did, we will continue to hold up the and live for him here. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? What? He's already given us redemption through Yahushua. So in your time of waiting, you better ask yourself the question, who am I really believing in? Am I believing in tradition, or am I truly believing in the scriptures that cannot lie? Very important for us to understand. Are you following me?
Yes.
All right. Now, we don't worship idols. And because somebody else said that, now, once again, you do have some of us that do. And I'm not making excuses for them. But for those of us that don't, you're not going to heap me up in that same category.
No.
And thou shalt find him, even though you will have neither temple nor its sacred equipment in the diaspora, we will still be able to find him. Because we've done what? Sought him with our whole heart. We've sought him with our energy. We've sought him with everything in us. And we won't give up till we find him. Just like someone tells you, go find the book in there on the bookshelf. It may be behind a couple of things. You go in there and say, I didn't see it. But when you truly make up your mind to go in there and find it, you go find it regardless of what you have to move out of the way, regardless of what obstacles are in your way. You are willing to move it because your goal is to find the object that you were sent to go locate and bring back. And what we are sent to get is a great relationship with him through Yahushua HaMashiach. So it's important that we maintain that and not let that go. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, let's finish reading. We're going to start at 30 to 39.
Leviticus chapter 4, verses 30 to 31. When you are in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you will return to Yahuwah your power and obey him. For Yahuwah your power is a merciful Savior. He will not abandon or destroy you, or forget the covenant with your fathers, which he confirmed to them by oath. Ask now about the former days, long before your time, from the day Yahuwah created man on the earth, as from one end of the Shemayim to the other. Has anything so great as this ever happened, or has anything like it ever been heard? Has any other people heard the voice of Yahuwah, speaking out of fire as you have and lived? Has any power ever tried to take for himself one nation out of another nation, by testings, by miraculous signs and wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, or by great and awesome deeds like all the things Yahuwah your power did for you in Mitzrayim before your very eyes? You were shown these things so that you might know Yahuwah is Savior. Besides him there is no other. From Shemayim he made you hear his voice to discipline you. On the earth he showed you his great fire, when you heard his words from out of the fire. Because he ahabs you, your avot and chose the descendants after them, he brought you out of Mitzrayim by his presence and his great strength, to drop out before you nations greater and stronger than you, and to bring you into their land to give it to you for your inheritance, as it is today. Acknowledge and take to heart this day that Yahuwah is power in Shemayim above and on the earth below. There is no other. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, very important for us to understand as Moshe is giving his disclosure or his discourse and reminding them and keeping them at a point to be fervent. He's still warning them, and he's already told them, you're going to slip up, but he didn't stop. Now you have to understand, those are the true marks or traits of a real leader. Regardless of how bad it looks and regardless of how you see the end result, you still continue to promote, you still continue to release the instructions over the lives of those that you know you have to release it, in spite of how it looks. Many people would have probably given up, but it wasn't their assignment. And so he continued, even though he knew they were still going to mess up and end up being released from the land. But he still had to continue to encourage them and continue to give them instructions. Thou would return unto Yahuwah thy Savior. This is an allusion to the deliverance from the Babylonian exile, where the captive Yashraelites had repented their sins. The similar passage below is an intimation of the final deliverance at some future time. Once again, he's speaking, at that time, Moshe was speaking future. You have to understand, our people went into captivity and was in captivity so much, it almost became they almost became perfected in it. They just love being in captivity. You know, you have people that just get out of jail and just like to go right back. You say, don't do that, and they go do something else, and they put them right back in that same position. It's like our people just had that in them to where they just want to. But watch this, Yahuwah never stop wahhabing us. Never stop wahhabing our people. And it is so. This is what he says. For as now of the days past, this verse and those that follow give two reasons why Yasharal's sin against the sovereign one would be unpardonable. Because of all peoples, Yasharal alone had heard Yahuwah's voice from Shemaim in a burning fire which came down to earth, indicating that there is no other power in Shemaim above and upon the earth beneath. Now, once again, very important that we understand what's being said. Because if we do, this is where, once again, you have a whole lot of folk that become antagonistic and ready to fight and ready to pull arms and legs apart. See, this is why there is no such thing as Yahush, which is a lie. Are you following me?
Yes.
But even with that, there is a lot that goes into that, and I'm going to only say a little bit. Yahuwah is the only power. Are you following me? But he has a son, and his name is Yahush, and he is our Mashiach. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. And so once again, it's understanding the system and it's understanding the setup, so that now we don't become antagonistic and fight one another over things that we should not. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important. All right, now, listen to what he says. Now, Yasharel's miraculous redemption from Mitzrayim by divine intervention is unique in the history of man. This event, too, demonstrated that there is only one power. One power. Are you following me?
Yes.
Once again, we do not disregard Yahush, our Mashiach. And this is what a lot of people do. Instead of them accepting Yahush as the son of Yahuwah, they take the same mentality as the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and at that time, the sages and rabbis, where they fought against him, where they said, you blaspheme because you make yourself equal to him because he called him his Abba. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So once again, it's a lot of things that go on that keep our people, once again, we keep ourselves at odds with one another. And I won't say it's the lack of studying. I'll say it's the information that we study sometimes. Because once again, when you have poison in the soup and you continue to eat it, eventually you're going to be poisoned. And many of us ahab studying, because I ahab literature and I ahab reading, but I also understand that when I'm reading and studying, I always ask Yahuwah to let me see the things that are contrary to his word and contrary to my way of life, so that I don't consume that. And now I have a parasite on the inside of me, just constantly growing. And every time I feed it something, it's getting bigger and bigger. Are you following me? Then eventually that parasite will take over and become what you call it, a symbiotic, what's that thing? say it again?
Symbiote.
Symbiote. Now it's on the inside of you, ruling you. Are you following me?
Yes.
You don't want that, and that's what happens. Really, it sounds funny, but that's what happens because now this false information takes form and takes over, and now you're following it when you were on the path of uprightness and you were on the path of studying what was right, but then there was something that was in there, and if we don't recognize error from truth, we would just consume it all. We'll just eat it all and think, oh, it's great. Until we start seeing those little subtle changes, so thinking, man, that I didn't see that on me. Now I'm breaking out in spots, and those spots become what? They become different things. Well, that does sound right. Then next thing you know, you're denouncing Yahushua. You're denouncing certain things at one time that you stood firm on and said, oh no, I'm not going to be shaken from this. Now you're shaken from it because of the path. Once again, these things are injected into the mainstream so that they can be found and so that people that are novices and unlearned grab a hold to it and now take it as valid information, and then they begin to teach it and promote it, and then you have somebody else that'll grab it and say, man, that sounds right, I was just thinking about that. Not realizing that just because it's a thought come across your head doesn't mean it's from Yahuwah. Does not mean that that's from Yahuwah. It could very well be a seed planted by the enemy and just waiting for the fertilization to come so that now it can take root in your heart. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's why it's important that we don't, when we see this stuff, ask somebody. You know, there was a time people would ask. Now people done got to the point where they feel like, I don't have to ask anybody. You know, I think people go through 4, 5, and 6 translations of the writings. And I'm trying to figure out, what are you seeking for? The only thing I would say not to get is a King James one, because they have altered and changed it. And then if you don't have the order, it makes it real difficult to really understand as you're reading, because you're all over the place. But I would say just, you know, even with that, be careful of what you get, because everybody's not ready to digest some of this stuff that's put out there. And it is so. Because it is laced with many bones. And it is so. All right. Let us read. Mm-hmm.
You shall keep therefore his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days upon the earth, which Yahuwah your power gives you forever. Then Moshe severed 3 cities on this side, Jordan toward the sunrise, that the slayer might flee, which should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live, namely Bezer in the wilderness and the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan of the Manassites. And this is the law which Moshe set before the children of Yasharal. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments which Moshe spake unto the children of Yasharal after they came forth out of Mitzrayim, on this side of Jordan, in the valley over against Beth Peor, in the land of Sion, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moshe and the children of Yasharal smote after they were come forth out of Mitzrayim. And they possessed his land and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, from Aroer, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and all the plain on this side Jordan eastward, even unto the sea of the plain, under the springs of Pisgah.
And it is so. Once again, he says, as thou seest today, this refers to the land of Sihon and of Og, which was already in Yasharal's possession. Once again, it was already in the possession. Now he goes back up and he's showing them things that they need to do and handle as they are prepared to go over. And Moshe separated 3 cities after uttering words of reproach and urging the people to be committed to Yahuwah and his commandments. Moshe seized the first opportunity of carrying out one of Yahuwah's commandments. He made arrangements for setting aside the 3 cities of refuge on the eastern side of the Jordan, which was already in their possession, although these were not used as such until the other 3 cities had been set up in Canaan. Because remember, it was the Reubenites, the Gadites, and part of Manasseh that stayed on the other side and didn't cross over Jordan. They stayed in and they built up Gilead and other places so that they could have their families there. And so they had the city set up, but the other cities couldn't be set up because they had not conquered the land yet. So this is basically, once again, stern rebuke, reproof, and also a encouragement, so that they would remember what they're supposed to do, in spite of them still forgetting. It was still given to them to remember, to follow with the plans. And this is the law. This alludes to the contents of the following chapters. Beyond the Jordan, as in the introduction of this scroll, so here at the opening of Moshe's discourse, proper, the scene and period are recorded where and when he delivered his farewell address, in which he expounded and completed the Torah. The only addition here is that not only was Moshe's discourse delivered after the defeat of Sihon and Og, but also after their lands have been allocated to the 2.5 tribes. Now you have to understand, he was, he was wired up. He was, ready to go. We didn't kick butt and take names. You got to remember, he wasn't on the sideline. He was killing and hacking and cutting too. And now he's ready to go in, but he's forbidden. And the reason he is forbidden is because, once again, he was debarred because he allowed himself to endanger the covenant because of his actions. We can never, ever allow our actions to cause us to endanger the covenant in the lives of people. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Very important that we understand. So that we will be mindful of our actions at all times, no matter where we are and no matter what we're dealing with or who we're dealing with. And it is so. All right, we're in chapter 5 now. Chapter 5, let us read 9 verses again, please.
Moshe summoned all Yasharal and said to them, Yasharal, listen to the statutes and ordinances I am proclaiming as you hear them today. Learn and follow them carefully. Yahuwah our power has made a covenant with us at Horeb. He did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with all of us who are alive here today. Yahuwah spoke to you face to face from the fire on the mountain. At that time I was standing between Yahuwah and you to report the word. Because you were afraid of the fire and did not go to the mountain. And he said, I am Yahuwah your power, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the place of slavery. Do not have any other powers beside me. Do not make any idol of yourself or for yourself in the shape of anything in the Shemayim above, or on the earth below, or in the waters underneath the earth. You must not bow down to them or worship them, because I, Yahuwah, am a jealous power, punishing the children for the father's sin to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing kind relief to 1,000 generations of those who ahab me and keep my commands. Do not.
And it is so. And it is so. Now listen what it said. Moshe called unto all Yasharal for the purpose of acquainting the new generation with the terms of the divine covenant. Because remember, their fathers had died out. So now this is the new generation. This is the younger generation. And he's acquainting them. Horeb. identical with Sinai, with our Abbas who lived in Mitzrayim, but with us. For there were many among the new generation who had witnessed Yahuwah's covenant on Sinai, to declare unto you the word of Yahuwah. That is the rest of the commandments. For only the first two of the 10 commandments were conveyed to Yasharal directly by Yahuwah. Saying, this is to be connected with Yahuwah spoke with you, the fire. Understands the word saying as a reference to the last sentence, and went not up into the mount. They told Moshe that they were afraid and would not ascend the mount. Remember, they weren't supposed to, they were just supposed to stand at a distance. Nobody was supposed to touch the mountain. For detailed comments, the 10 commandments, on the 10 commandments. It is not enough to believe in Yahuwah. We must also believe that there is no other deity besides him. And once again, the importance of understanding this is understanding that we never take the writings and what he says out of context.
Right.
No, we are never to worship any other power, but we are to give regard and we are to esteem Yahush our Mashiach.
That's right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
We are to esteem him because he was a sacrifice. Now, once again, understanding, keeping everything in its perspective and not taking it out of context to where now we say, okay, well, Yahush doesn't matter and he's not supposed to be here. That's a lie.
Right.
Now, I will say this. In my studies, I am learning. Many people have said that Yahush is Yahuwah in the flesh. This is wrong.
Right.
It's wrong. And many of people will disagree to what I'm saying, but you have to understand, once again, it's wrong. He is his son, and they are akkad. And because they are one, does not mean they are one in the same flesh or one of the same body. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Because to say Yahuwah is Yahush in the flesh is to say that Yahuwah died,
Right. Right.
and he did not. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Once again, I know many of people will have problems with that. Because when we read it, even in Yehukanan, when it says in the beginning was the word, and the word was Yahuwah, and the word was with Yahuwah. And in the beginning, we find that. But once again, the problem comes in is when we read from, once again, the perspective of tradition. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You cannot read it from tradition. Let me go there real quick. Let me go unto Yehukanan. Because I want to make sure, like I say, I ain't ashamed and say you got to go back to it. Yehukanan 1 and 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with power, and the Word was power. He was in the beginning with power. All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. In him was life, and the light was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, once again, understanding what is being said here. And the reason why I'm bringing this out is because so many times when we read interpretations like this, we tend to take it and say, well, they must be talking about Yahush. So we cannot give credence to him, and we can't listen to him because he's a false deity. He's false. He's false. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's a lie. He is valid, and he is very relevant and has place in our lives. Because if you don't accept him, you surely can't accept the Abba. Once again, you have to understand Yahuwah is sovereign. He can do whatever he wants. And once again, the mentality, as I read earlier about the Maimonides and the rabbis and the sages and even the Pharisees, many of us have that same mentality, like Yahuwah can't do anything unless he passes it by us first. He owes us nothing but to judge us. But because of his mercy and his compassion and his covenant, he did not. Because he is not a covenant breaker. He's a covenant keeper. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And so when we see these things, the first thing we say is that Yahuwah is in the flesh. Once again, to bring correction, Yahush, the Torah made flesh, is what Yahush is, what he was, and what he still is.
That's right.
He is the instructions of Yahuwah made flesh.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
Not Yahuwah in the flesh. And this has been a misconception and a false teaching for many years. When you look at Christianity, Christianity says God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. Everything is God. Are you following me?
Yes.
Everything. Now you have to understand everything is of and has been made by Yahuwah. Are you following me?
Yes.
We have to understand you cannot bring pantheism into this. Meaning he's the rocks, he's the trees, he's everything. We can't do that. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand these things. And very important for us to understand never to dismiss Yahush, our Mashiach. Because the moment you dismiss Yahush, you dismiss Yahuwah from your life as well.
That's right.
We were riding the other day and I said, it's amazing how many people will believe and accept an animal sacrifice, but will not accept the sacrifice of Yahush. Why? Because once again, relationship.
Right.
When you have a relationship with Yahuwah, he will bring these things, he will bring clarity and understanding into our hearts concerning these things. Because see, these are the media things of the Torah or of the word. And when you don't understand the media things, you will tend to say that can't be Yahuwah. Because we feel like we have him in our back pocket.
Right.
We feel like if he doesn't pass it by us or ask us first, then it can't be right. That's not so. Once again, the bottom line is never dismiss the place and the purpose of Yahush in our lives.
Right.
And understand, once again, Yahuwah is power, all power. And his son is Yahush, our Mashiach. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important to understand that. And understand that Yahuwah is not Yahush in the flesh. Because once again, when we say that Yahuwah died. And you have to understand, if Yahuwah died, everything would stop existing. Everything would stop existing. And to say that he could die would say that he had a beginning. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
To say that he could die says that he has a beginning. And he is all existing, ever existing, ever knowing. He is infinity. He is all that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. And when we understand these things, it helps us to better be able to articulate and intelligently explain why we believe the way we believe.
Right.
Because his instructions. Now, once again, I'm going to read Yehukin in 1 and 1. And we're going to go back to this. But I wanted to bring that out because, once again, when we began to hear these, that there is no other power beside Yahuwah, we then began to attack his son, Yahush, our Mashiach. And we began to assault his character, and then people began to assault his credibility, which is not the thing to do. Now listen what he says. In the beginning was the word, or the Torah, and the Torah was with power, and the word, or the Torah, was power. He was in the beginning with power. All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. In him was life, and the light was the light of men, and the light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. All the way to verse 5. It's very important that we understand that. He was with Yahuwah, and when you say was, understand, he came out of Yahuwah. Are you following me?
Yes, yes.
Just like a son and a daughter comes out of the papa and the Ema, or the Ema and the papa. We are one because we are connected by what? Blood.
That's right.
We are one because you came from us.
Right.
So technically we are one. But you're not inside of me and I'm not inside of you.
That's right.
Are you following me?
Yes.
But we are one. Because we are what? Connected.
That's right. That's right.
That's what makes us a God. Problem comes in is when many people cannot separate or discern what is being said here. And so people began to go off on a tangent. And once again, because you have a lot of erroneous literature and false literature that has been stuck into the mainstream, we grab a lot of things. It's just like a fisherman. When you go fishing, you're going to catch a lot of things. But just because you catch it doesn't mean you're supposed to eat it. We catch catfish, but we know we ain't supposed to eat it. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And see, one of the things we don't do is we don't do like many of people do, cheat. We don't take nets and drag them on the bottom of the water, on the bottom of the ocean or whatever kind of lake or whatever we are, and just grab everything that comes in, because now you're cheating. You're truly not a fisherman. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, many would say, well, they did that in the Bible times where they cast their nets over on the other side of the water. But you have to understand, this is what they did, but they didn't do it like they're doing it now. They did this for eating.
Right.
This is their livelihood. Nowadays, people do it, and they catch any and everything. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand these things. And so you catch some of everything. They catch sharks, they catch dolphins, they catch literally everything in those nets. And then some of it end up dying, and then some of it they take and say, well, we caught it, we might as well eat it. We catch it or we get it and we say, well, we might as well read it and might as well see how to apply it. Not so. Because it becomes detrimental to our health. And we don't want to die. Are you following me?
Yes.
Because of poisoning our own cells with self-inflicted wounds, because we poison ourselves with the stuff we continue to feed our ruach. This is why you have to a degree, to discriminate. You have to discriminate with what you eat. You have to use wisdom in what you eat and what you drink. Just because a lake looks clear and the water is crystal clear doesn't mean it's clear, because there are parasites that dwell in cold water that you can't see with the naked eye. And you drink that water, it's clear and cold, and you be like, boy, that water tastes good. But give it a month or two, and you begin to see the results of parasites in that clear water. This is why we have to discern and be able to take out what is not edible and disregard it.
Right.
Don't eat it, disregard it and get it out of there and continue to move forward. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand. All right, let us finish reading, please. We starting at verse 11. Yeah. Chapter 5 of the Beardum. Verse 11.
Thou shalt not take the name of Yahuwah your power in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Keep the Shabbat day to sanctify it, as Yahuwah your power hath commanded thee. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Shabbat of Yahuwah thy power. In it thou shalt do no work, thou shalt do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy ox, nor thy ass, nor thy cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Mizraim, and that Yahuwah your power brought thee out of thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahuwah your power commanded thee to keep the Shabbat days. Honor your Abba and your Ima, as Yahuwah has commanded thee, that thy days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with thee in the land of which Yahuwah hath given thee. Thou shalt not kill, neither shalt thou commit adultery, neither shalt thou steal, neither shalt thou bear false witness against thy neighbor. And it is so.
And it is so. Once again, he's setting the standard, and he's putting the Torah back into their hearts and keeping them in remembrance once again, so that they will not forget what is required of them and what is expected of them. Now listen what it says, nor thine ox nor thine ass. These animals are not mentioned in the earlier version of the Decalogue and Shema 20 and 10. The addition intimates that even the vital work of tilling the soil, usually performed with these animals, must not be done on the Shabbat. So once again, it's giving even, he's alluding to, don't even do that. So he's making sure they understand now. I'm putting the animals out there so that you can't do it, okay?
Yes.
And so once again, very important for us to understand. Thou was a servant. In Shema, Yahuwah's resting on the seventh day of creation is given as the reason for the institution of the Sabbath. Here it is the deliverance from Mitzrayim slavery. In truth, both reasons are complementary. The connection between the Sabbath and the creation conveys the idea that Yahuwah is the origin of all existence, omnipotent, able to free, to act according to his will. The same attributes of Yahuwah were also revealed in the deliverance from Mitzrayim, and its association with the Shabbat was added by Moshe because he was addressing those who had personally witnessed the miraculous redemption. If any doubt could arise in their minds as to the truth of Yahuwah's omnipotence, which is manifested by the institution of the Shabbat, it will be confirmed by their departure from Mitzrayim, which was brought about by the superiority of divine intervention over the laws of nature, that it may go well with thee. Some detect this phrase as an allusion to the immortal life in the world to come. Once again, very important for us to understand what is taking place here. Which I tend to agree. The reason when he took the rest, and also remember they were slaves in Mitzrayim. Slaves, just like how we know our ancestors and forefathers were slaves in the cotton fields. No rest for the weary. Day in and day out, even giving birth. I heard you hear some horrible, horrific stories about the women and even the men when they would be sick. They still had to work. They had to work through fevers. They had to work through chills. They had to work through hunger. They had to work through the cold. And so, and even in the heat, it was no such thing as, it's too hot. Too hot. That's why you out there working. Because our people could endure the heat. But there were stories about women giving birth in the cotton fields. And right after they gave birth, they would have to cut the umbilical cord, then give birth to the placenta, and right after that, get right back up and put the baby in a knapsack or one of the sacks on their back or in the front, and they had to continue to pick cotton. They didn't give them rest. They didn't give our people rest. So this is why we as a people ought to never have a problem with resting on the Shabbat. Because some people work, and you forget our ancestors prayed and thought about a day. Those that were working in the cotton field, a time that they could rest, a time that they could lay down, and a time that they could take and learn and then eat and then rest some more. So we ought to never have an issue with the Shabbat and truly resting in the manner that we're supposed to. Now we're in class, and because we're in class, we're not doing anything to exert anything. Now, if your mind working is exerting something, oh, you burning energy by thinking. Are you following me?
Yes.
I know. But the thing of it is that we are supposed to learn. Are you following me?
Yeah.
But we are to rest from our everyday labors, grinding to make that dime, grinding to make that money. Are you following me? This is a time that we focus on giving him our undivided attention, hobbing him, learning of him. Are you following me?
Yes.
So that we may grow and develop into the people that we are supposed to be. Once again, I believe they look for a day. Like I said, you heard things like that. People getting bit, people getting having to have certain body parts amputated, but yet still had to work. There was no such thing as taking a rest. There was no such thing as a water break. If they got water, they got it, but by the time the day was out, they ate and they went to sleep. Are you following me?
Yes.
Harsh labor. So once again, we ought to give Yahuwah thanks every day of our lives for being able to celebrate and commemorate the Shabbat, and it is so.
It is so.
And it is so. All right, now once again, let us read once again, giving the Ten Commandments, giving an outline, and once again making sure that the structure remains intact, so that as they go in and possess this great land, their land, they would continue. They would know how to walk upright before Yahuwah and maintain and keep in contact and keep in context everything that He had given unto them, and it is so.
And it is so.
All right, come on, let's read a little more. Mhm. When do you stop?
Chapter 5, verse 20. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor do you desire your neighbor's house, his field, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, his ox, nor his ass, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. These words Yahuwah spoke to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud and of the thick darkness, with a loud voice, and he added no more. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. Verse 23. And it came to be, when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and said, See, Yahuwah our power has shown us his esteem and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. Today we have seen that power speaks with man, and he lives. And now, why should we die? For this great fire is consuming us. If we hear the voice of Yahuwah our power any more, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living power speaking from the midst of the fire, as we have and does live? You go near and hear all that Yahuwah our power says, and speak to us all that Yahuwah our power says to you, and we shall hear and do it. And Yahuwah heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me, and Yahuwah said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people which they have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they have spoken. Is that 8 verses 9?
9.
Verse 29. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, to fear me and to guard all my commands always, so that it might be well with them and with their children forever. And it is so.
And it is so. And it is so. Once again, he's giving them and he's reminding them. They lived. They lived. They heard the voice of Yahuwah and lived. And watch this. Yahuwah already knew what was in their hearts. That's why they were afraid. Because they could not stand the terror of his voice because of that what was in their hearts. They knew they weren't going to do right, even though with their mouths they said they would. Once again, very important for us to observe the character and observe our people. And in observing them, make sure that we don't portray those same traits. That when Yahuwah is speaking to us, we become afraid because we don't want to hear. We don't want to follow his instructions, so we start shrinking back because we don't want to follow and give credence and following his ordinances, his commands, and his statutes over our lives. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, come on, let's read. We're going into chapter 6. We at verse 30 and into chapter 6.
Yes.
All right. Let's read verse 30 and let's go into chapter 6. We have, let me see, how much is chapter 6?
It's
25 verses in chapter 6. Okay, chapter 7 has, how many? 26? Okay, we can finish this. All right. Let us read, let us do 9 again.
Verse 30, then go into Verse 30, go say to them, return to your tents again. Chapter 6, verse 1. These are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahuwah your power commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you're going to enter and possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power and keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command you, you and your son and your grandson all the days of your life, and that the days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, that and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah power of your always has promised you, in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one, Yahuwah is a God, excuse me. And you shall have Yahuwah your supreme one with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart. And you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them while you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And it is so.
And it is so. Now listen, verse 30 reads a little different. You shall walk in all the ways which Yahuwah your Savior hath commanded you, that you may live, and that you may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall possess. Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the ordinances which Yahuwah your Savior commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where ye go over to possess it, and that thou mightest fear Yahuwah thy Savior, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command thee, thou and thy son and thy son's son, all the days of thy life, and thy days may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah your power of your Abbas have promised thee, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. Once again, all of this is Moshe's discourse, his encouragement, his rebuke. This is his way of bringing them to that place, because this is now the final stretch. This is the final stretch, and he has to reiterate what is necessary and what is needed for them in entering into the land. Because you got to remember, they went through a lot. Now, this is one of the things I want to look at, is where it said, even with your children. It's not just enough for us to fear Yahuwah. It is important that that same fear be taught to our children. In other words, the reverence, and also to fear him, because we know what he's capable of doing, and to reverence him. Now, once again, this is something that we are supposed to do. Thou shalt teach them diligently. The verb signifies impress sharply. The commandments which follow have been previously recorded, and the law makes it obligatory upon the Abba to teach the Torah to his children. Is implied in the often repeated phrase, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and in similar exhortations. Now, once again, somebody would say, well, if there is no Abba in the home, then what do? You teach your children. He said, you shall teach your children. Now, you have to understand, many of those, now watch this, there were the men that died out. And I believe there were families that died out because they didn't believe. You're not going to make me believe that only the husband or the man can pass that mountain for 40 years and he died and his wife took the opposite approach. I believe that some things were done as a unit or as a cod. So as he marched around that mountain, I'm sure so did she march, and she died as well. And at the same time, you had men that died and the women were left. Are you following me?
Yes.
And they were the leaders of their home. Now, somebody would say, well, it doesn't specifically say that. No, it doesn't. But you're not going to make me believe that that those women that were left out there by themselves. And they had to wait for a man or for their sons to get older. It said, teach your sons. Now, understand, daughters are included in there as well, because he did not just bring men out of Mitzrayim. He brought the nation out. He brought the nation out, meaning he brought the men and the women out, or the women and the men. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And so that meant that all of them had to learn. Because what good or what profit would it have for the children or the nation of Yisrael just for the men to know it? And if they all died out, then the women would surely have been left.
Right.
No, once again, you have to understand, this is for all of us. When he says, "Hear, O Yasharal," he's not just talking about the men, he is talking about the nation as a what? Whole. As a whole. Now, what does he say here? He says, listen what he says. Thy Savior, Yahuwah, is one, and thou shalt ahab Yahuwah thy Savior with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be upon thy heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy what? Children. Unto thy children. And thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy bed, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Most of the time, if the women were at home, they did most of the what? Teaching. When you are in your bed, that means when you're at home. So it was a dualistic thing.
Right.
It was a thing that both were supposed to do, not just the man, because all men are not teachers and all men are not leaders. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And that's no disrespect to anybody. But if that's not what you are, then trying to put yourself in that position can be very detrimental. And you can really endanger the covenant upon somebody's life. Once again, to teach them means also they need to watch your life and learn and grow from watching you do. Because a lot of time people can do a lot of this, but no actions to back it up. So once again, the thing to remember is he said, "Hear, Yasharal," not "hear, men." That meant he was talking to the whole nation. And so for the women that were there that had no ish in their lives, they were responsible for learning and teaching the Torah. Are you following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand that. Now listen what he says here. Once again, I told you there are certain things when we read it, it brings about an imbalance because now we believe that everything rests upon the shoulders of the man. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Many of y'all ain't gonna like it, but it's the truth. It takes two to bring forth life, not one.
Right.
It takes two. It takes male and female, female and male. Not two men and not two women. That's just a mess. And nothing comes about that but a mess. But it takes two to bring forth life. And it takes two to instill in that one life. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Teachings of morals and standards. Not just one, two. And the reason why there becomes an imbalance is because what? It's only one doing it. I don't care if a man, and I'm not saying this in disrespect to any single fathers that are out there doing their best. I commend you. I pray for you. And I applaud you. Same thing with single mothers. But you yourself can testify. It still takes two to balance it. A scale is not a scale unless it has both to be able to weigh it. Weigh everything. And it has to be balanced. Without two bringing forth, it's an imbalance. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now, for somebody to say, well, what if my ish or my isha is not in truth? And they don't want to be in truth. You can't change a person. You can only do what the writings command you to do, and that is to teach it, talk about it in your house, and to live it. You know, you hear people say, a woman can't teach a young boy. You may not be able to teach him how to be a man because that's something that men and women are born with, to know how to be what you are. It's amazing. A chick or a pullet does not have to be taught how to be a chicken when it gets older. Neither does an eagle, a hawk, a dog, or anything else out in creation. From birth to adulthood, it already knows what to do. What happens is when things start interfering with the way of life. What makes a dog sorry is when people start beating on it and using it in the wrong manner. That's what makes a dog sorry. By nature, a dog will be a dog, defend itself, eat, and go about its way unless you start bothering it. But it's taught how to be vicious. It's taught how to be sorry. But just to be a dog that just lives day to day, it already knows how to do it. And the same thing with everything else. The only thing you can do is be a guide there and guide them into truth. Just like brothers can't teach their daughters how to be women. They can only be an example of what a real man is supposed to be. And the same thing with my Akotis. You can only teach your son what a real woman or ish looks like. And that's praying. That's having a devoted life.
Yes.
Walking in truth. Because that's all that is expected of you. When you start trying to make that man hard or that little boy hard, you've overstepped your boundaries. When you try to make that little girl girly, which she's already girly, because if you are the influence, that balance is going to be there. If you start trying to make them be what they already are, that's when you're going to have problems.
Yes.
You try to make a shoe be a shoe. It's already a shoe. Just put it on and walk in it. Are you following me?
Yes.
And this is where a balance has to come in. So just because you may not have a woman or ish in your life or a isha in your life doesn't mean that you cannot bring forth the teaching. Live the life and continue to rehearse it in their ears. And Yahuwah through Yahush will do the rest.
Right.
But the problem comes in is where women now have these little boys that are disobedient and rebellious because from a little child, they let them get away and they gave them everything they wanted. Now they're 9 and 10 and they can't do nothing with them. Because when they were smaller, they should have put a handle on that. Are you following me?
Yes.
This is just common sense right here.
Yes.
You can't have that. Well, I want it. You are not going to get it. And they let them act a fool and then they walk off and leave them. Well, you just act a fool by yourself. Well, you a fool too because you're going to let them waddle on the floor and do what they're doing and think that's going to help them get better. When they get 19 and 20, they start popping you across the head, snatching your keys, and then walking out the door. Because, see, that's the result of letting them run and wallow around in the floor and act a fool. You embarrassing me. No, you ain't going to embarrass me, but I'm about to embarrass you. Are you following me?
Yes.
You teach them from a baby. Now, all children are going to try you at some age. I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even when they're young adults. Some of them will try you. But you still got to let them know who's the alpha. Are you following me? You still got to let them know who is in control and who is first. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. Because if not, you will have a mess on your head. And then when these things happen, the first thing they're saying is, well, I need a man in my life. No, you need Yahuwah in your life. You need Yahush in your life. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Whether you're male or female, we need him in our lives. Because he is the one that helps us to do what we need to do. But speak of it, teach it. Don't let this system take and destroy your children, especially if you send them to public schools.
Right.
They're not teaching them obedience; they're teaching them how to be rebellious, even through the school work. But if you instill in them truth, when they go, they will know how to resist that, and they won't walk and they won't follow under that. So it's important that we understand that. You're following me.
Yes.
Once again, important that you teach your children. And listen what he said. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thy house. You sitting in your house. That means you have to teach them. They need to hear you talking about the Torah. They need to hear you rejoicing over the Torah. They need to hear you celebrating the Torah.
That's right.
They need to hear us. And the more they hear us, the more it will incite in them and birth in them that same reality and that same desire to walk in truth and walk in obedience. And listen what it says. When thou sittest in thy bed, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thy eyes. To fall means to bind to the mind. That means give it access to your mind. So many people say, man, I'd be so troubled in mind. You're troubled in mind because you don't have the Torah bound to your mind. Troubles are going to come, and challenges are going to come. But when you bind the Torah to your mind, that's the gatekeeper. Can't nothing get in there. Now, you have days when the enemy will try to come in and just weigh in through the Torah. Once again, y'all heard me say this, we like movies. And one thing about vampire movies, if you watch a vampire movie, the only way a vampire can come in your house is you have to welcome them in. You know, we see the old vampire movies. Vampire, you just climb up, go in the window and all this stuff, but then they start doing a little research and they want to try to bring a little, vampirism is real. But what they want to do was kind of show you a little more, the educated vampires want to show you that they were more educated and had a little more savvy to themselves, to where they just didn't come in. You had to invite them in. Same thing with sin. Once we come into truth, you have to invite it in, because it's not going to come in and just beat you up. Are you following me? Yes. We were born into sin and shaping into iniquity. But now we're outside of that lifestyle because we're living according to his instructions. The only way now is that you invite it in. Just like a vampire. You open the door and let them in, they're going to come in. Same way with sin. You open the door, it's going to come in. And it's not going to be bashful. It's going to come in and it's going to take over. This is why it's important that we teach it, and we teach it at all times. Even when you're playing games, even when you're doing other stuff, there still ought to be the foundation of Torah in there. And it is so. It's very important, like I say, to keep it upon our lips. And once again, no matter who you are, whether you're male or female, teach Torah to your children. Whether you're married, single, teach it to your children. Right. Walk in compliance and walk in obedience. And make them sit down, because you got to do it sharply. So when they start asking questions, you'll be able to answer them. Are you following me? Yes. And it is so. All right, let's read. Come on, let's finish reading.
Verse 10. When Yehudah power brings you into the land he swore to your office, to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, to give you a land with large flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of great things you did not provide, wells you did not dig, vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget Yahuwah who brought you out of Mitzrayim of slavery. Fear Yahuwah your Savior, and serve him only and take your oaths in his name. Do not follow other powers, the powers of the people around you. For Yahuwah is your power, who is among you, is a jealous power, and his anger will burn against you, and destroy you from the face of the land. Do not test Yahuwah your power as you did at Massah. Be sure to keep the commands of Yahuwah your power and the stipulations and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and great in Yahuwah's sight, so that it may go well with you, and that you may go in and take over the great land that Yahuwah promised you on oath to your own, thrusting out all your enemies before you, as Yahuwah has said.
And it is so. Once again, following the instructions, very important. All right, let's continue to read. Mm-hmm.
When your son asks you in the future, what is the meaning of the decrees, statutes, and ordinances which Yahuwah has commanded you, tell him, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Mitzrayim, but Yahuwah brought us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand. Before our eyes, Yahuwah inflicted great and devastating signs and wonders on Mitzrayim, and Pharaoh and on all his household. But he brought us from there in order to lead us in, and gave us a land that he swore to our fathers. Yahuwah commanded us to follow all those statutes and to fear Yahuwah for our prosperity, always and for our preservation, as is today. Righteousness will be ours if we are careful to follow every one of these commands before Yahuwah our power, as he has commanded us. So.
And it is so. Like I said, now understand, when thy son asks thee in the time to come, saying, what mean the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Yahuwah our Savior hath commanded you, then we give the testimony. We know we may not have been in there, but we were still bound and locked up in sin. We were slaves to sin because we were disobedient to his instructions, because we knew nothing of his instructions. We only knew that what we were taught through Christianity. So now when not just the sons ask, but even the daughters ask, what meaneth this? We're able to give them an intelligent explanation and walk them through the writings, showing them why we believe and why we do what we do. And it is so. All right, let's read. Chapter 7, let's do 9 verses again.
When Yahuwah thy Savior bring thee into the land whither you go to possess it, and have cast out many nations before you, the Hittites and the Gershites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations, greater and mightier than thou. And when Yahuwah thy Savior shall deliver them before you, you shall smite them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shall you make marriages with them. The daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, but his daughter shall take unto thy son. And they will turn away the son from following me, that they may serve other gods, as with the anger of Yahuwah will be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly. But thus shall you deal with them. You shall destroy their altars, and break down their images, and cut down their groves, and burn their graven images with fire. For you are a set apart people unto Yahuwah thy Savior. Yahuwah thy Savior has chosen you to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. And Yahuwah did not set his Ahab upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all people. But because Yahuwah Ahab you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, as Yahuwah brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. Know therefore that Yahuwah thy Savior, he is power, and diligent power which keepeth covenant and shalom with them that are him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. And it is so.
And it is so. And it is so. Very important. Now listen what he says. He says, don't give your sons, neither your daughters, into marriage, mixed marriage. And I know a lot of times this can be very touchy, especially when you're dealing with our people, because our people tend to mix marriages. They tend to go and marry everybody outside. And when they do, it causes them to stray further. It causes them to stray even further away from truth. And, you know, people say, well, you know, you can't help it. I beg to differ. You can determine who you going to have. Because if that's the case, you, just like the writings say, you're like a city without walls. Because you can do nothing with your ruach. If you have no better control over yourself, that's a problem. Once again, your emotions, you just fall in a hob with anybody? Just because somebody's nice to you, just because somebody compliments you, just because somebody, no. But listen what he said. He said, don't do this. That means sons nor daughters, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son, for he will turn away thy son from following me. He said nothing of the daughter. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And that's not to be trying to bring about a negative reproach or reproach against men. It is just saying, brothers, Ak and Akodi, we have to cover one another, especially our Ak. Because if you join yourself with these people, you are going to be led astray even further. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And this has happened. And somebody may say, well, what about them that's married to foreigners and they're all trying to walk in truth? It's still not acceptable. Because now you're still trying to make Yahuwah out to be a liar. You're still trying to say, well, it didn't work. It failed. Because we are serving him. No, it's unacceptable unto him. So he says, don't do this because they will cause them to stray. So understand what's being said here. That they may serve other gods, so will the anger of Yahuwah be kindled against you, and he will destroy thee quickly. But thus shall you deal with them. You shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars, and hew down their asherim, and burn their graven images with fire. For thou art a Kadesh people unto Yahuwah thy Savior. Yahuwah thy Savior hath chosen thee to be his own treasure. We are his own treasure. And anybody understands about treasure and valuable things, you just don't let anybody have your treasure and your valuable things. Any and everybody just can't touch your stuff because it belongs specifically to you. So you're like, don't touch that. No, that's mine. Leave that alone. You can deal with that over there, but leave that alone.
Right.
Don't bother that. Don't even look over there. Don't bother. Now listen at this. Out of how many people? All peoples. All people. That means we are a treasure set apart. I don't care if they find a new species of people, we still that special treasure. Are you following me?
Yes.
I don't care what people, who they find, we are still that set apart people, that treasure unto Yahuwah, because he chose us to be. Are you following me?
Yes.
That upon the face of the what? Earth. That means no matter what new people, what old people they find, we are still his treasured possession. And we need to carry ourselves in that manner. Yahuwah did not set his ahab upon you, nor chose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all people. But because Yahuwah ahabed you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore unto your fathers, hath Yahuwah brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim. Know therefore that Yahuwah thy Savior, he is power, the committed power, who keepeth covenant and mercy with them that ahabs him, and his commandment to 1,000 generations. Once again, to 1,000 generations. That means us, y'all. We are included in those generations. Very important for us to understand. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to them that hate him. He will repay to him to his face. Thou shalt therefore keep the commandment and the statutes and the ordinances which I command thee this day to do them. Important, because he commanded them to do it then, just as he commands us to do it now. Very important, and it is so.
It is so.
Now we are going to go into Yashayahu, which is Isaiah chapter 40. And we're going to go through, it's verses, 1 through 26. 1 through 26. And we have 9 verses in the Hadash. Once again, we have 26 verses. Let's do 5 verses.
Yashayahu chapter 40 verses 1 through 5. Comfort ye my people, says your power. Speak you comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her, that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned. For she has received of Yahuwah's hand double for all her sins. The voice of him that cries in the wilderness, prepare you the way of Yahuwah. Make straight in the desert a highway for our power. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the esteem of Yahuwah shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of Yahuwah hath spoken.
And it is so. Comfort you, my people, says power. Yahuwah calls upon his prophets to console his suffering people. The repetition denotes emphasis or urgency. Urgency. This is the comforting comfort by which we are comforted when we listen and hear what Abba Yahuwah has for us and all that he has given unto our people. As we read it and he's speaking to them, he's also speaking to us. He's also speaking to us. And this is why we can never lose our confidence and lose our hope. Her time of service, the time which has been decreed for Yasharal to be exiled, will be over. It says it's over. Double for all her sins. Yasharal has been exiled twice in the Babylonian captivity and the dispersion after the destruction of the second temple because of sinfulness. The term double may also mean several times, even more than twice. Hark, one calleth. The Ruach Kodesh proclaimeth. Every valley shall be lifted up. This is figurative language expressing the thought that the journey back to Jerusalem will be easy for us. Are y'all following?
Yes.
This is why we can't lose hope in the midst of troubles. This is why we can't lose our confidence. This is why we cannot, even I believe it's in Abraham 10 and 30 or 30 and yeah. It's okay. Where he tells us 10 and 35, I believe it's 10 and 30. Let me find it. It tells us, cast not away our confidence, which has great recompense of reward. Give me just a minute. It's 10 and 30. No, not 10 and 30. 35, I believe it is. Yeah, 10 and 35. I was off by 5. 10 and 35. Do not then lose your boldness, which has great reward. Do not then lose your boldness, which has great reward. We can't lose our boldness, neither can we lose our confidence in trying times. And these are trying times for us as a people. But if we hold fast and don't let go, we will be those that will experience his greatness, continue to experience his greatness, and we will continue to experience his esteem upon our lives. Once again, this is an urgency. He's speaking to them out of urgency. Now, remember now, Moshe has just spoken to them back in Debiram about them falling and making a mistake and being dispersed. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Their sins going basically cause them to be dispersed. But then Yahuwah turns around and comforts and continues to comfort us and our ancestors and forefathers in spite of their what? In spite of their disobedience. He continues to comfort them. Are you hearing me? Yes. In spite of it. Because he esteems us. Now, listen what he says. Hearken, one said, proclaim. Hark is literally a voice. A voice from Yahuwah said to me, proclaim. In his vision, the prophet heard a voice urging him to proclaim Yahuwah's message. Once again, very important for us to understand that Yahuwah wants us to proclaim the message of truth, his Besorah to our people, so that our people will hold on and continue to fight the good belief, the good fight of belief, and not get weary in well-doing, and maintain our course, maintain our momentum, and let nothing stop us, whether it's our mishpachol, nothing. Let nothing stop us, and let nothing stop our momentum, and let nothing stop us from obeying the voice of Yahuwah. And it is so. All right, let us read 6 to 11.
Verse 6. A voice says, cry out. And I said, what shall I cry? All men are like grass, and their esteem is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, because the breath of Yahuwah blows on them. Truly the people are grass. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the Torah of Yahuwah stands forever.
Say that again.
The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the Torah of Yahuwah stands forever.
The instructions of Yahuwah will remain forever. And it may say man in one rendering, but it says all flesh is grass. Whether you're male or female, all flesh is grass. And man perishes, and no reliance can be placed on his promises. Sad but true. Come on, let's read.
You who bring great tidings to Zion, go up on a high mountain. You who bring great tidings to Yerushalayim, lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up, do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Yehudah, here is your power. See, the sovereign Savior comes with power, and his arm rules for him. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. And it is so.
And it is so. You read to verse 11. Read verse 11.
Verse 11. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms, and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young.
Mhm.
Yes.
And you're going to listen at this. Even as a shepherd that feedeth his flock, that gathereth the lambs in his arm, and carried them in his bosom, and gently leadeth those that give suck. Once again, just as a shepherd does, so does Yahush, through Yahuwah. And Yahuwah does it. Yahuwah, does it through Yahush. So for those that are troubled in heart and mind, believing about myself and I need to follow the traditions of men, you have to understand, just as a shepherd takes care of his sheep, so does Yahuwah take care of us. And though your situation may be different, doesn't mean that now you're outside and he's not going to take care of you. He's going to take care of you, and he's going to tend to you because you need tending to. All of us do. But some of us have different needs. Our needs are different than others. And so it's important that we understand these things. Shut that one down. And it is so. All right, let's read. Twelve to 17.
Verse 12. He hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out Shemayim with a span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance. Who hath directed the ruach of Yahuwah, or maybe his counselor hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, and he instructed him, and taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are as counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up his idols as a very little thing. And Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beasts thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing, and vanity. And it is so.
And it is so. All right, let's read.
Whom then you liken Yahuwah? Or what likeness will you compare unto him? The workman maketh a graven image, and the goldsmith spread it over with gold, and casteth silver chains. He that is so impoverished that he has no oblation chooseth a tree that will not rot. He seeks unto him a cunning workman, to prepare a graven image that shall not be moved. Have you not known? Have you heard not? Has it not been told you from the beginning? You not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is here that he sits upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretches out of the Shemayim as a curtain, and spread them out as a tent to dwell in. That brings the princes to nothing, he makes the judges of the earth a vanity. Yet, and it is so.
And it is so. All right, come on.
He that shall not be planted, he that shall not be planted, ye that shall not be sown. Ye that stumble shall not take root in the earth, and he shall also go from them, and they shall wither in the whirlwind, and the whirlwind shall take them away as stubble. To whom then will ye take lightning, or shall I eat, saith the set apart? Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their hopes by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong and power, not one faileth.
And it is so. Not one failure. And it is so. All right, let us turn our attention to Matthew, chapter 23. We only have 8 verses there. Starting in 31. I'll read it since it's the last. Wherefore you be witnesses to yourselves. Once again, Matthew, chapter 23, verses 31 to 39. Wherefore you be witnesses to yourselves that you are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your ancestors. You serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the judgment of Gehenna? Therefore, behold, I send to you prophets and wise men and experts of the Torah, and some of them you shall kill and destroy, and some of them shall you scourge in your synagogue and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of uprightness, Hebel, to the blood of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, whom you murdered, between the bed Hakmadash and the altar. Verily I say to you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Yasharal, O Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you that killed the prophets and stoned them which are sent to you. How often would I have gathered your children together? Now listen what he said. How often would I have gathered your children together, even as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you would not? You have to understand, there are certain things that can't be done with the children because they learn the same things as the parents. And if they're doing the same thing as the parents, then they're going to be rejected as well. And this is why it's important that we understand that you have to live this life. You have to live the life, and you have to listen. Because if you don't ascribe to living this life, you won't. It doesn't come just because. You have to be more than a hearer. You also have to be a what? We have to be doers. Behold, your bed is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall not see me henceforth till you shall say, Baruch is he that cometh in the name of Yahuwah. And it is so. And it is so. Once again, look at how things are done. Now, once again, it is about us being unified. We as a collective have to repent and pray together for the return of Mashiach in the name of Yahuwah. That is what will cause the Mashiach to return, and not world evangelism as popularly taught. The Ibram people will one day have a national fast when we are to fast at the brink of disaster, uttering the words in Matthew 22 and 39. And the Mashiach will return. The quotation is taken from Tehillim 118 and 26. I believe that that is one of the things that is so important and so significant, and why the enemy fights us in this area, because he knows that when we unify, and I'm not talking about 100 or 2, I'm talking about us as a nation all around or not all around, but across the four extremities. Across the four extremities, that we will begin to see, and we will see the hand and the power of Yahuwah move on our behalf when we unify and we acknowledge we need one another and we must do this thing as a nation. I pray that what was said to you today has helped you in your belief walk and has helped you in this Sabbath, this Shabbat, that you will stick close to Abba Yahuwah. Go back, read the writings again. Go back, listen to it again. Once again, I will not and I will never apologize for the beginning to the end, because I don't believe in giving a half-baked message, and I don't believe in giving portions of the scripture. I believe in giving it all, because when they stood and read and did what they had to do, they read it all. They didn't just read portions of it, because they understood you need all of it. You can't just have one or two verses. You need all of it. And so with our Torah portions, this is what we do. And so once again, I want to say to you, may Abba Yahuwah continue to baruch your day or your yom. May he continue to smile upon you and lead you into the path of uprightness. May he continue to shine upon you. May he continue to lead and guide you into all Torah truth. Once again, I pray the sweet communion of Abba Yahuwah through his son Yahushua will be upon you this Shabbat. Once again, I am Aleya Yasharal, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Bread Belief Ministries, located in South Carolina. I want you to remember, keep your head up, keep your shoulders squared, and keep your heart and your mind in and upon the Torah, because you can't go wrong. Once again, I want to encourage you to keep your head up and keep your shoulders squared. I want you to remember, here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom of Bread Belief Ministries, this is the place where
The Torah does the body excellent.
Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. And it is so.
It is so.